Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability.
Okay, I'm Andrea Anderson with Team Disability. I'm here with Chip Dodd. Actually, I'm not here with Chip. I'm in Virginia Beach. I'm at home, and Chip is still out west. He's in Wyoming, and that lucky dog got to do another race without me, but I'm dying to hear about it. He did the Cowboy Tough in right outside of Cheyenne, Wyoming. It was a 24-hour race. Rev 3 put that on. They also offered a 4-hour and an 8-hour. And I'm really excited to hear about it. Chip, why don't you tell us first, like, how did you come across this race? Like, what put you in the right place at the right time to do this race?
Well, a couple things. I remember when we first got involved in adventure racing, I think the first time I'd ever really paid attention to the World Championships, it was in 2017, and it was the Cowboy Tough. And it was Rev 3 and Mark Harris, who's now Adventure Enablers, like Mike Spiller, who's Rev 3. They were kind of combined at that time, and they put on this race, and it was just a big lead up to it. And our friends Mary Foster and Greg Prouty, they drove out to do the volunteering, and it was like this really big deal. It looked like a super hard race, big expanses of desert wilderness, very cold, and I just remembered thinking, like, my gosh, that must be amazing. And so we just got done doing Expedition Colorado, and previously, Mike had reached out, I think, for the 50-hour race that he did in Virginia. He reached out to us to say, most people know we put out videos of like every race we've done since whenever we started, like 2016. It seems like we've been documenting our races and putting out videos, and race directors watch them, racers watch them. So I think Mike was wanted to kind of promote his 50-hour race, and he had offered a discount to the race if we'd come up and do a video, but we were already booked to do Croatia, so I had to turn him down on that. So once we got done with Colorado, I was like, well, next weekend after Colorado, there's the Cowboy Tough 24-hour. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I could extend my trip a little bit, drive up north and do this 24-hour for you, give me a little discount, I'll do video, we'll do a race ramble, yada yada. And so he took me up on the offer, and so I drove up to it's Kurt Gowdy State Park is where the main race occurred, and then the Medicine Bow National Forest, I think it is where a lot of the race occurred for the 24-hour folks. And so that's kind of how I got wrapped up. I love being out west. I love big mountains. I love visiting new places. I had never been to Wyoming. And so just, it's a little bold to get done with a really hard Expedition Colorado. And we pushed very hard. We got second place because we ran and suffered and yada, yada. And so then to pull off a 24-hour race, just, less than a week later, was bold, but I felt 80% there. And so I decided to go for it.
So how ready would you say you felt? Do you have a percent? Like, were your legs ready? Were you mentally there? Were you recovered completely from Colorado?
Some days I forget that I'm 50 and I feel invincible, and then I make bad decisions. And this is one of those where you were right, I was wrong. So immediately after Colorado, I think I put you on the airplane, and then I am going back to 1.5 hour, 2-hour bike rides, fully loaded, trail runs for 1.5 hours, thinking that I need to train for this 24-hour race. This is what I noticed. Running downhill or flats is fine. Biking on flats is fine. I can barely tell I did Colorado 2 days later. But then when the terrain turns upward and I have to walk up a hill, it's like my legs protest. They revolt. And it's like, just going up 2 flights of stairs, I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 100 years old. So I should have taken that as kind of a warning, like maybe before a 24-hour race, you don't want to go on an 1.5 hour trail run fully loaded on elevation. But I did, just because the park was beautiful. You can see the terrain. For those of you watching on YouTube, I have a backdrop of the terrain. It's very steep and rocky and dry. And I should have taken it easy. And I didn't. And I regret it because 4 hours into the race, my legs felt like noodles. Just going uphill
Wow.
was very hard and very slow. And I was like, I've blown this race. So I'd
Well, a
say,
lot of times I feel like, I really wish I was doing the race with you. I usually have a lot of FOMO. And then on Saturday and even Sunday when I was working out, I was like, I am not back yet. Like and I've taken a couple of days off where you haven't. And I just, like you said, the uphills is where it's at. Like anything pretty moderate is like, no problem. I feel really strong. But today is Monday, and it's been, 7 or maybe 8 days since Colorado. I finally feel strong. But you probably don't. You might feel wrecked. How do you feel today?
well, I haven't done anything today. So I feel perfect. I am getting ready to go for a hike. And I figured I got an 8-hour race coming up on Saturday. So this time I'm just not going to push it as hard. But right now it's only Monday. So, um,
Wait a
I'm
minute.
still,
Wait. You just said you have an 8-hour race coming up on Saturday.
yeah, the guys at the Cowboy Tough, a couple of the racers said, "Oh, Chip, you're kind of in the general area. You should do this one called the Bears Ears in Steamboat, Colorado, which is pretty high altitude. It's an 8-hour race." And I was like, interesting. And so yeah, so I think I'm gonna circle around and do that race. But this time I'm gonna taper a little bit. Obviously, an 8-hour race, you got to be able to push very hard, very fast because you don't have time to make up errors. You've got to go. So I'm gonna take it easy starting on maybe Thursday. But
I
today
would
I'm
say
hoping
you
to go
should.
do a big burly hike and see how things work out. But actually, to answer your question though, physically I can't tell that I have raced at all because I'm not walking uphill. The only time I can tell that I've raced is when I'm actually going uphill and then I realize there's something wrong.
Well, I think you should taper a lot this week, not just a little, but that's my advice. Anyway, we'll move on. I remember watching the Cowboy Tough when we were really new racers. And I remember there was a really muddy leg of the race that looked horrific, but I don't think you had that experience. Why don't you tell us about the terrain and what's the altitude there? And did you have
Yeah,
good weather, bad weather? What
yeah,
did you
it's
think?
I think the altitude's right around 7,000 feet, although during the course I think it went from 7 to 8. I know that Mike kept talking about during the race brief that there's at least a 1,000 foot of elevation change going from the Kurt Gowdy Park up to the high point in Medicine Bow. So I was fully acclimated just because we had just come from Colorado, so acclimation wasn't a problem. It is high desert. I mean, 7 or 8,000 feet, still pretty high up. Very low humidity. Everything is wicked dry. The sun is bright. There is very little vegetation until you get into the mountains. It's quite interesting. Like when we got into the Medicine Bow area, what is just a pile of rubble down in the Kurt Gowdy area with lots of cactus. Now you're into pine trees. So we really went through two different biological, type areas with different vegetation, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And I am gonna again, because Mike wanted me to put out a video about the race, so I videoed the whole thing, and so I brought that up in the video, which you'll see. I'm mountain biking through like pine trees, which earlier in the race you see this looks like Roadrunner and Coyote Desert. It's just nothing but rock piles. There's no vegetation. So it does, when it does rain, it like sprinkles for like 2 seconds. But we had the entire time I was in the park, which I think I think I stayed there for a total of 5 days. Not once did it rain hard enough that you would need like a jacket.
Wow.
All the most of the creeks are dry. It was very hard to find water on the course. Actually, during the course, we'll talk about that later, but I had to stop at an RV and bum some tap water from some guy. I was like, I'm out and there is no water and I'm going up elevation. Like my race is over if I don't start begging for water.
Wow.
Um,
Well, you're lucky you found someone to bake from.
yeah, there's lots of RVs out there, so I wasn't too worried. And then when it comes down to temperatures, like during the day, it was beautiful 70s. At night, it was like 50s and 60s. It was perfect race on weather. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds so wonderful. So I know you said that they did something a little bit different when you went to check in for the race on Friday. You got the maps and you got to keep them.
Yes.
So what was that like? What did you
Yeah.
do to prepare as far as that goes? And did you like having maps ahead of time?
So yeah, this was very different than every race we've done in years and years and years. I can't remember the last time somebody gave me maps the day before. And it's almost
Well,
to the,
Croatia.
yeah, but only some of the maps, right? They gave us, but yeah, here's the
They,
problem.
only for a short amount of time.
When they,
Yeah.
yeah, for a short period of time, which that was cool. Like, because the idea is that the problem is that if the maps are sitting there and you could be working on them, especially if you're allowed to use the internet, you can't go to bed because you want to work on the maps, like the clock's ticking. Like, as a navigator, you want to keep looking and keep looking at it. I mean, before you know it, like every single intersection you've got memorized. So part of me loves it when they hand you out the maps the next day where you can get a really good night's sleep before a race. Most races, they lock you down with technology. All you get are the maps that the race director gave you. You pull out your cell phone, use the internet, you basically are disqualified. So Mike, I think he had two strategies on this. One is he wanted this race to be accessible to new people. Like when he says, how many people this is their first race? Lots of hands went up, right? There isn't an adventure racing community out here. So he's really trying to build the community. So he doesn't want to do the torture that we get in a lot of races on the East Coast where it's like, get on the bus, here's your maps. And then you're bouncing down the bus with a headlamp trying to do your maps for 2 hours. You're stressed out about pooping, and then you get off the bus and it's go. And if you're an advanced racer and you've done that 1,000 times, it's kind of like, okay, this is just part of the torture and the suffering. He didn't want to do that out here. He wants to build the community. He wants people to come back and race again next year. So he doesn't want to give them a bad experience. So I think that was part of the reason why he wanted to give the maps out early. So everybody was like, no stress. Here's the maps. It's 5 o'clock. Relax. Got plenty of time. The other thing is the maps in this area. I don't think the maps in this area were very good. And so the maps that he has access to, they didn't have all the trails, and the ones that did have the trails, they were very, very light yellow. So you couldn't see them. You'd actually have to have like jeweler glasses to see the trails. And he already mentioned this, like he's going to partner up with Mark Latanzi to build his maps next year, just because the maps that he had access to out here were not good. Latanzi's maps are the best in the country, I think, or maybe in the world. So he knows that the maps are a problem, and he wants to solve that with Mark's help. Which that'd be a good idea because the maps were difficult, but he did the best he could. So basically, he gave us maps. He gave us overview maps that were like 1/60,000 scale, which is a little wonky. I'm used to 1/50,000s, but I think he just wanted the course to efficiently fit on the map. And then he gave us some other maps that were 1/37,000 scale. Again, a little bit wonky, but wasn't too bad. I'm used to like 124, 125 for the main map, and then 150 for the overview maps or the paddle map if you don't need a lot of detail. And then for the maps of the park itself, I think he had 123,000 scale. But he also gave us two different maps. He gave us one that he was calling a topo map, which is basically the same information you would get from my topo, which most racers, the USGS 1983 kind of time frame, which has the topo line. So that map was fine. It's got the topo, but it didn't have the trails. So then he gave us one he called the terrain map, which really was it was kind of like shaded terrain, I guess. It didn't have the topo lines, but it had the trails on it. So as a navigator, I love it when I have, I'm sorry, as somebody who wants to win, the more complicated it gets, the more I like it, because we do a lot of racing and a lot of maps. And so I feel great with just maps all over the place. I think new racers may have been a little intimidated. It's like, wait a second. I've got the printed park map that you can get at the visitor center, which have all the trails. Beautiful map, by the way. Then I've got a terrain map that has my checkpoints and some trails, but I can't really see them. And I have this other map that's my topo with the topo lines, checkpoints, but no trails. And you're going flip flop, and all this the sizes are different and everything. So it was complicated, but I think it was just like, here's everything I got that to give the racers and let them pick which one that they wanted to use. But I'll tell you what I ended up doing. I mean, I ended up doing a couple of different things, but I think the one that worked best in the Kurt Gowdy State Park is I used the Kurt Gowdy State Park map, transcribed the checkpoints over. Other than the map was fragile and it tears apart, and I had to tape it together in the van. It was annoying. But that worked really well for the biking. But here's the other thing that was really different about this race. And it was part of the race. Everybody knew He publicized it. You can bring in outside maps. You can use your own maps. He said it multiple times in the written stuff and the race brief and everything. I should have listened, but I wasn't. I was worried about Colorado and doing Expedition Colorado. I should have listened, and I should have bought a national park map for the Medicine Bow Park. And he even said, you're picking up the maps, you could drive and go get one of these maps at the trading post down the road or whatever, if you want. But he recommended us to buy our own maps of the area, and so that we had the trails. I didn't have that. I didn't want to drive into Cheyenne. That would have been a 40-minute round trip. I got the maps. I want to start looking at maps and prepping for the race and everything. So I'm kind of lucky, or let's just call it prepared, that I drive my office. I have a printer, I have a computer, I have internet. So literally I went up to the highest point in the park and fired up the computer and started using CalTopo, which we use for Disability Adventures to do our virtual races. And I printed my own 1/24,000th scale My Topo black and whites of most of the course, especially the part that was in Medicine Bow. And I ended up using those maps probably 80% of the race. Meaning distance wise, 80% of the race, I probably used my own CalTopo maps that I printed. And then the other part of the race, I used the park map that was tearing apart, and I was frantically taping it together. And I probably used his maps really only to transcribe the CPs onto the other maps. Very different.
I guess the only thing to add here is that listeners should know that's not the usual way races usually go. You usually get the maps that you're given from the race director, and that's that. You're not allowed to use outside stuff. But that's interesting that you had so many tools. I wonder, do you think that gave you an advantage? Well, I imagine it would, because we're used to creating courses and using CalTopo quite a bit. So I don't know, did you feel like you had an advantage? And I'm not saying unfair, because everybody, could use everything at their hands, but how did you feel about that?
Yeah. Because we use CalTopo all the time and I'm very familiar with the software, that definitely gave me an advantage. Because everybody can use CalTopo. I think it's free. But we just use it so much. I was actually able to transcribe the CPs onto CalTopo. So basically, within like an hour and a half, I had recreated his entire race and printed the maps in CalTopo, which most people wouldn't.
Wow.
It takes time to put in the checkpoints and make sure they're right. And, and I actually mistranscribed one. We can talk about that later, which I got lucky. But also not everybody carries a printer in their car. That was the thing that gave me a really good advantage, is I could print and put it on paper and put it in my map case and use it. Even if people could use CalTopo, they would have had to draw the trails on their race maps. Actually, Mike even said during the race, you can access your cell phone. You're not allowed to use your cell phone for navigation. You can't, just look at Google and like use it to navigate, but you could look at maps on your cell phone. So people could bring up CalTopo and look at the maps. Again, he designed this course for entry level. He was giving everybody every crutch that they needed just to get through the course and have a really good day. And he basically said those points out west are for the really competitive teams. If you're new to adventure racing, you might want to think about giving those up. Like, that's the real adventure race, is out west, the Medicine Bow. The inside the park is like right off the trail.
And spoiler alert, you won the race. You were overall winner. But also there were only 3 teams that cleared the course, right?
Right. Yeah. And his intent, he said it multiple times, his intent was he designed the course so that 1/3 could clear. I'm not sure why only 3 teams cleared. There wasn't 1,000 racers, so it might have just been a percentage wise. It may have been close to 1/3. Who knows? But the navigation was, even with CalTopo, the navigation was tricky. A lot of the trails that were on the map were old dirt roads going through the middle of a field where you could barely see where the tire tracks were, or the grass was discolored slightly from it being a road 100 years ago. this was actually
Wow.
a lot more challenging navigationally than most of the races that we do. I mean, I call it
Wow.
brute force navigation, where it's kind of like you have to ignore all the crap on the map, and you're really just looking at these large terrain features and spurs and streams and getting the lay of the land. And I mean, literally many times I'm just riding across a field, and this is a public land, or BLM, a Bureau of Land Management. You jump a barbed wire fence and you head on a bearing for 2K, and you can ride through this stuff. It's not there, especially in Medicine Bow, there weren't many cactuses, so I felt fine riding the bike. So I'm just riding through a field where there's cows and stuff, bumpy and
Wow.
rocks and stuff. But it,
Wow, I can't wait to see the video of that.
yeah, this was not your normal, like, follow the trail, look for the squiggle, turn right, go in 100 meters and pop the point. It wasn't like that. This was like, there's no trail. You're lucky if you find a road that's like been driven on.
Well, so only 3 teams cleared, but a lot of teams used their full time, and I think only 1 or 2 might have had to drop. So from that standpoint, it probably was a well-designed race in that it met its intention, for multiple levels. And if you said the navigation around the park might have been a little more easy than the far away points, that would make sense to me too, for that kind of follows with other races.
Yeah,
So
Kurt Gowdy, almost every single intersection has a trail map printed and signs saying what the trail names were. And Mike had all given us a park map with all the trail names. I know some teams got in there and got turned around, but it, compared to normal, where there's no trail signs and there's no trail names and you're just navigating off of what direction, that's what I meant by it was easier, because you can say, oh, I'm on Gold Rush and I'm heading north. I just got to look at the trail map, find Gold Rush, look up, there it is, and then there's an intersection. So for newer teams, that probably was really nice. And these are, I think it's, I can't remember, the National Mountain Biking Association. These trails were just groomed mountain bike trails. They were absolutely amazing. Like, everybody should come visit this state park. I would love to come back and spend another 5 days there. It was amazing.
wow. And the 4-hour race was sold out. So
Yeah.
that's great. Hopefully a lot of new people came to the sport through that means. So talking about the different areas of the course, I think there were 5 legs. And the first one, you had a choice of you had to bike, paddle, and trek in the very first leg. So it seemed like there was a bit of strategy that could come into play with that. So what did you decide to do, and how'd that pan out?
Yeah, I think okay, so out here it's again, we're 20 miles outside of Cheyenne, and there's not a lot of outfitters. So this wasn't like a typical race on the East Coast where you could say, oh, I need 50 canoes and 6 kayaks and everything's there and set up. There's a very, very tiny little kiosky kind of rental place in the park. And so Mike had tried to negotiate with them to get stuff, and they sounded I think they tried to gouge him a little bit because they knew they were only a game in town. But either way, okay, so this is how it works. These bodies of water are pretty large, and also out west it's windy. So a solo really shouldn't get into a canoe. You're just going to get blown all over the place. So he only had a handful of kayaks, and there was more solos than kayaks. So I think what he did is he broke it up in such a way that you mountain bike down, you could go right to the TA and jump in the kayak first and go, or you can go get a couple of bike points and then go to the TA and get in the kayak, or you could go get a couple bike points and then go on the trek and go to the high point, come back and get the kayak. So the idea is, if there's ever a kayak that wasn't there, you kind of had the option to go out and get some more points and come back. And then eventually, I think it was a 22-minute kayak. So he knew that even if you had to wait, you're not going to wait very long. 22 minutes if you know what you're doing and you don't get lost, right? So I was actually on the fence. I was like, part of me wanted to do the bike first and then the trek and then get on the kayak to give my legs a rest, because the trek section was basically a jog around the lake and then up to the top of a high point and then jog back around the lake. So, and I was definitely going to be running. So I was thinking, okay, a bike ride and a run, it'd be nice to have that break. But by the time I did the bike ride, and we had to go uphill on the bike ride, and my legs were already feeling it. And I was like, screw this. I need to get in the kayak, give my legs a break. I shouldn't have run yesterday. That was dumb. And so I did the bike first. I did do the 2 bike points on the way down, and then did the paddle, which the paddle was straightforward. It's a fairly small lake. Again, it took 22 to 25 minutes. And then I did the trek up to the high point back to the bike. And then that's when the fun begins. Everything was straightforward until that point. Meaning that okay, this race, which I really appreciated, much of the race had a lot of course strategy. And what I mean by that, some races, they put the checkpoints in such a way the route is obvious, or going off trail doesn't make any sense. It just makes sense to follow the trail. So you end up with an ant trail of racers, and you know exactly where you are in the lineup because that guy's in front of me and that girl's behind me. And okay. So the minute we got back on the bike after the first bike, the paddle, and the first trek, we go on to actually leg 2, which was the part going out to Medicine Bow. That's where the real race began with the strategy.
And how long did that first leg take you?
I don't remember, but it couldn't have been more than a couple hours.
Okay.
Pretty fast.
All right. So then the real race starts.
The real race starts. Okay. So this was a little bit of a gangster move, and I guess I'll not gangster move, but it just a creative course, design and strategy. So
call it what you will.
Call it what you will. Okay, so I'm going to do it for those of you watching. I'm going to do a screen share of Cal Topo showing the course, the CPs, and some of these moves. But because a lot of people listen to this on a podcast, I'm going to try to explain it in such a way that you can visualize it. So basically, we're in this Crystal Lake Reservoir, and there's a dam, and then they set a checkpoint in the Middle Crow Creek below the dam, and so it was a lot of topo drop, and his race maps cut off kind of the roads underneath this lake. So it made it look like the only option that you had is to ride these mountain bike trails up and over this high point or around the high point to go down into this huge ravine to get this checkpoint in this Middle Crow Creek. But because I was studying Cal Topo and I was able to zoom out and look at like, there's got to be another way. That just looks like a sufferfest. And I noticed that there's a nice little road 210 that goes down around the bottom of the lake. And then there's an access road that could access the dam, for the waterworks people or the Federal Bureau of Water Management or something like that. Now, Mike was real specific. When you're in Wyoming, you don't go onto people's private property. If it says private property, that probably means they're a cowboy, they have guns, and they don't like you to jump their fences, right? So he basically said, don't go into private property. If it says private property, do not enter, don't go. We got a medical person on the team, but we don't want to deal with gunshot wounds, right? He literally said that during the brief. So everybody was like, okay, private property is off limits. So luckily I went around and I knew I was taking a risk because if it says private property, I got to turn around and go all the way back around into the park and go up and over the damn hill I was trying to avoid. But it only said Federal Bureau of Water people tampering with this is a federal offense, and I decided I'm not tampering. I'm just going to go pop this checkpoint and leave. So I went up in there and got that point. So I was pretty proud of myself. I think I saved a lot of energy, and I think it was a lot faster. So I was on my way out of the park, heading over to Medicine Bow, which was the next kind of cool move. He had made it clear on his map that there was this one road that was off limits. And when he had scouted the course, it was not off limits. And then when he came back, private property signs had been put up and everything like that. So he made it clear, hey, this road going up to this checkpoint 111 is off limits. You can try to find another way there. If you go on your own software and try to figure out a way around it, but you can't go on this one road, right? So I've got it on the screen here. I got where it starts and where it ends. Basically, it's all the way to the property line of this Medicine Bow National Forest. So I was able to go on Cal Topo, and I actually literally printed just like a normal race. I printed 1/24,000 scale maps, black and white. And I found a trail that I thought was going to get me over to this Medicine Bow Park, bypassing the private property, which it did. although the trail petered out, I was just in a field. Like I basically jumped the fence right as I crossed this Medicine Bow property line. The road stopped because it was a barbed wire fence. And I just followed the remnants of like what used to be a dirt road for a farmer. And then eventually that just petered out. And then I just brute force navigated through the crap in the swamp all the way up to this this other road, this 700C road, past the private property, got on the road, and then hauled butt up to 111. So I think I probably came up with the most efficient route to get to 111, which a lot of other teams, they navigated all the way through the state park and up and around and down and did it as an out and back. So yeah, so my legs were hurting because the whole time you're going from the park up to Medicine Bow, it's pretty much uphill. My legs were hurting and I was moving real slow. And I was like, I have got to be smart on my nav or I'm going to get my butt kicked in this race.
So you just said something. You said you had to navigate through the swamps there. I see some blue dotted lines that usually means there's water in those
Yep.
reentrance. Was it wet? I mean, I think you just said it was kind of deserty.
This is cool.
So
this is cool. I'm glad you're bringing this up because this was like mind blowing, right? This is like high desert. Everything is just like dusty, dirty, rocky stuff, you know, especially down in that park. It's almost like a glacier went through here at one time and kind of scooped it out. So in the park, it felt like erosion, like reentrance, like we're used to on the East Coast. And then the closer I get over to Medicine Bow, the more of these big flat areas that just were like a swamp. Now, if you remember when we did Expedition Ecuador or Wadasenchi, we were in that Paramo, right? They're very high altitude swamps. Like the swamps that when we walked, it was like a mattress and it was bouncing. It was spongy. It felt like one of the girls that were at the we were talking at the finish line. She said if you took a knife and punctured it, you think it would like pop and you would sink, like a trampoline.
Weird.
So yeah, some of these areas, it was just perfectly flat and it totally turned into a swamp. And now you're like walking through this like muckety muck of gunk. And so yeah, so this was.
But you're on your bike here. Were you able to bike through that?
No, I had to like walk with my bike through the mud. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
But there's two different sections that felt just like Ecuadorian Paramo spongy, bouncy trampoline mud. Weird.
Wow, that's wild. So you made your way to Medicine Bow Park. Did it get less complicated or did you stay on trails or what happened there?
So yeah, they basically in races like this, you kind of have two strategies. Do I take the trails, not knowing how groomed they are? And again, if you're looking at the screen, you can see there's like a spider web of trails in this Medicine Bow Park. It's a very popular park, horses and hikers and bikers. So there is some single track and all of that. The race maps had very little detail on the trails, but luckily since I was using Caltopo, which is what I'm sharing on my screen, you can kind of see a lot of the trails. Now, just because there's a trail on Caltopo doesn't mean the trail exists there in the real world. So I started to get good at like, if it's a white road, I knew it was pretty good. If it was a white road with dashes, it might be okay. It's probably rocky and bumpy. It's like an ATV trail. And then anything that was red or black, and again, I was looking at, I had black and white maps. So when I was looking at it, it was black on my map, but it's red on this one. It might be there, it might not. It's just, it could be groomed single track. It could be non-existent, figure it out yourself. So I started to get comfortable though with understanding kind of how it worked. And so I decided what I wanted to do is take the most direct route, taking into account topography, going, did I want to go up, down, or stay flat, as well as if there were roads, I was going to try to take the roads. Usually the race director wants you to ride the single track and all of that. And so they give you like a point in the middle of a single track to kind of force you to ride it. So I'm going to use an example of how, because I had the Caltopo and I was off his map, I figured out a way around it. Like on this map where I was leaving the park, there was this one checkpoint B that he had put flat in the middle of this wonderful single track trail that I'm sure would be fun if you were not racing. I was able to exit the park and take the road jumped a barbed wire fence, went in and popped that point on foot. A lot of other teams took the trail, which would have been a lot of fun, but it would have taken a lot longer time. So again, if you're in these things to win, you've got to be thinking, how can I go through the course most efficiently, even if it's taking a road instead of a fun trail?
So you're talking about how you decide certain things, but you're just excellent at navigating through spaghetti like mountain bike trails and single track. And I don't know how you do it so fast. Do you have any tips or tricks?
Yeah. One thing is I have a Sunto Global compass on I use double-sided 3M tape. I hooked it to the map board upside down, meaning that the base plate is what's connected to my map board. The bezel actually hangs off the front of my map board, so that the compass is like sticking out. And that I did that for two reasons. One is when you go to connect a map to your map board, like I use binder clips. Some people use the clear overlay. If the compass is on the map board, then your map's covering up the compass, or it gets hard to see the map and the compass at the same time. So having the compass out on the map board and my map could take up the full map board, that helps a lot. Then also at night, my bike light shines forward, and I can actually see the light through the compass. So even at night, I can see the needle on the compass, even going through bouncy, wonky terrain. And that helps me navigate. Now, some people like to spin their map board on the bike, like orienteering. They teach you, basically keep your direction of travel up, right? So it doesn't matter which way is north. Just if you're heading down a trail southeast, you want the trail and the map to look the same because you've oriented the map. But biking, I find it's very difficult to do that. See, trekking's a lot slower than biking. So the minute you're on a bike and you're doing these crazy turns, you'd be there spinning your map board every 5 seconds. It just doesn't make any sense. So what I do is I leave my map board north up. That allows me to mentally kind of memorize the map. And so I can see the turns kind of in my head, and because every time you spin the map, it's like a new map to your brain. But if you leave the map north up, every time you look down on the mountain bike, it's the same map. And it's easy to remember which way is northeast, south, and west. If you spin the board around and you think which way southeast, you got to like kind of spin your head around and go, okay, southeast is that way or whatever. It's just hard. So I leave the map board north up, and I literally try to follow along every single squiggle in the trail. I try to follow along on topography. Should I be going up or down? Should I be crossing a stream or not? If there is a stream crossing, I'm listening to see, do I hear water? Every single intersection, I'm rechecking the bearing. Am I turning in the correct direction that I'm expecting? And I reset my odometer. So I'm using the odometer all the time to say, is this the right turn or not? Because on every adventure race, there's going to be trails that aren't on the map. There's going to be trails on the map that aren't there in reality. And so you just got to get methodical. Every single intersection, hit that odometer, make sure that you've got your correct millimeters on your front tire, dial it into the odometer so it's basically perfect. And then don't take the turn unless it's the right time. It says 230 meters, you should see a trail, then it plus or minus 10, it should be there on your left side. And then you check the bearing just to make sure. And then once you get on the trail, are you staying flat, going down, or going up? That's a third or fourth verification that you're on the right trail. We obviously, people that know us know that we race a lot. I've now been on courses more than 500 hours this year. Normally I'm the lead nav. We spend a lot of time looking at maps, and it just takes practice to get your brain to absorb all of those different data inputs so that you can stay on track, or at least correct quickly if something goes wrong.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is you do everything that we do when we're on foot. Just what you do it really quickly on a bike. Like things move a lot faster on the bike, and
right.
Yeah, you're just really good at that.
Yeah, you got to
Well, with
be.
the exception of the map being north up, that's something, but you do that a lot when you trek too, don't you? You use north up when you're
It
on
depends.
a trek section too.
If I'm doing just like orienteering, if I'm doing terrain features mostly, I like to orient the map, because then whatever I look down at the map and I look up and that's what I see. If I ever get lost and I'm not positive where I am, I'm going to orient the map and look at it like that. It's when you're like following a trail and there's lots of squiggles. I don't like orienting the map. But if I know I'm just going across, I got to go 2K in this direction, and I'm going to find the checkpoint at the stream crossing, then yeah, as long as I'm going in one direction, then I'll orient the map in the direction I'm going and leave it like that. It's just not on the bike.
Yeah, I just feel like that requires you to flip something in your brain every time you choose a different way. I don't know, tricky. It's tricky, but you're really good at it. Obviously. But what parts of the race really stood out to you?
Yeah, as I was going back and looking at the race, there was, and again, it's sometimes a lot of people think of Team Disability as like the mid-pack team, and I think that's because we do a lot of big expeditions around the world and we compete against some of the world's top athletes, and like getting into the top 20 means that you're really, really good. But in these smaller races that are like your backyard 24-hour races, we are very competitive, and so I literally went into this thinking, I just got done at Colorado. I got all my gear. I just spent 64 hours looking at maps. Like, I am tuned up to go into this race rocking and rolling. And so I did go into this thinking I want to be light and fast and really try to go for the win. And then I got out there and my legs are noodles because I didn't taper, and I was like, darn it, like I could, I really thought I was going to blow this race. So that was kind of a little bit of a low when I'm leaving the park and I'm all excited because I just did this whole damn gangster move, DAM gangster move, cutting corners and being smart on nav, and I realized physically I'm not going to be able to do well in this race, but mentally I think I can come up with enough nav choices, course strategy, and just be smart and efficient that I can make up for my physical not being there. And of course, our very good friends Bones, Roy Malone was there, but not the normal Bones team with Mary Chandler, and they're just destroying teams out there. This was Roy and his son, and I don't think his son adventure raced a whole lot, so this was, I think, kind of a fun race for him. But we both kind of looked at each other like, yep, we're gonna be competitive and this is gonna be fun. And luckily we got, it's really interesting because normally like we start a race with Bones and then we never see him again until the finish, and they're already showered and cleaned up by the time we get there. This race was a lot of fun because it was like we were like we're basically leapfrogging the whole time, and we took very different course strategy. I don't think he had the Cal Topo, so he was using the maps he was given, which was way harder than what I had, but he's an excellent navigator. So we like spent so much time together on this course. It's like every 5 seconds, like, oh, there's Roy again. Hey, Gavin, what's going on? Let's hang out and go do this, and then try to move on. This is a lot of fun. So those are some of the high points. I made some silly nav errors. Like I came up, yeah. I just feel. I mean, it's like, I guess what happens, especially if your heart rate starts getting high. You get dumb. If you're going slow, if you could look at maps sitting in your arm, in your couch armchair, and everything looks easy, and why did they make that decision? But when you're out there and your heart's beating really hard, especially when you got Roy Malone chasing you, you make dumb decisions, right? So let me give you an example. I'm showing a screen right now. One of our checkpoints, 113, was on Pole Mountain, which is 9,000 feet, and we had to climb up there from like 8,200 feet. So basically it's this huge climb. We're well into the race. We're in the heat of the day. This is also where I almost run out of water, but luckily I bummed some tap water off a guy in an RV, and so I was back loaded with water, but now I got like 3 liters of water on my back to crawl up this stupid hill that was really steep and rocky. And I get to the top, or what I thought was the top, and there's a gate, and there's like some people were walking around and it looked like they were hikers. And I was like, great, I'm here. I'm finally at the top. And I go shuffling up to the top of this high point and I'm videoing, and I'm like, oh, look at the view and yada yada. And I'm like, where's the checkpoint? And I'm like looking around and like, dang it. And I look to the north and I see another mountain that's even 100, 200 feet taller than I am. And I'm just like, damn it. And so I knew Roy and Gavin had blown by me. So I hustle back down to the bike and got up and I catch them. They're getting off their bike and setting a bearing and going in for the attack. So I walked in with them. We get to the spur where I make my second dumb decision. We basically, from where we dropped the bikes, we had to go up and over a spur and then down into a saddle and then back up to the high point. And when we both, all three of us got to the top of this thing and we looked over the edge and was like, you got to be kidding me. It just looked like a sheer drop with trees. And at this point, we're out of the high desert. We're into the forest kind of. And we're just looking at the map and looking at the thing and going, crap, like, how do we get down this thing without getting cliffed out and get over to this big ass mountain? And we're all tired from coming up the hill. So I was just like, you know what? Normally a spur has the better, like more gradual topo than just the edge of a spur or of a spur. So I was just thinking, you know what? I'm just going to go down the spur and circle around. They made the better decision. They said, no, let's go uphill just a little bit and then down across the saddle. So by the time I get up, walking up the pole mountain, they're already coming down. And I think Roy even was like, that's going to leave a mark, like, because it was such a big mountain. It's just, this is just going to suck. But either way, it was like two bad nav choices back to back. And I was just going too fast. I was just not thinking and being stupid, which happens to all of us, I think.
Yeah, I'm really, really surprised with that because you would normally notice that you were going the wrong direction too, because the high top you went to was kind of a southerly direction when you're supposed to be going north.
Yep.
And it was, like you said, a couple of 100 feet difference. I guess you didn't use your altimeter very much in this race, or did you?
No, I didn't use the altimeter a whole lot. I should have maybe. Actually, on this one, I should have used the bearing because it's like, this is obviously, I got off the trail and went southeast into this high top, which if you looked at it, the high top should have been to the northeast. And I was just being stupid. I was just going too fast and getting dumb, and it's one thing if you're out there by yourself and you can kind of take your time. It's another thing when Roy Malone's right on your ass and you're going up the hill and leapfrogging, and it makes you want to go a little quicker, and a little quicker means a little higher heart rate, and a little quicker means you're not being careful, and then you do dumb stuff. And but he was on point. He had his dialed in. So it was like one of them. I couldn't count on him making mistakes because I don't think he made any. At least none that I know of.
Well, so you said your legs weren't quite there, but how did your nutrition play into your race? Like, I know we usually do keto like eating. We're not very strict, and I know you'd had some carbs after Colorado. But did you have carbs, and what'd you eat, and what'd you think?
I am so far. I'm still a big fan of and I don't know if I call it low carb, but I the bad carbs, right? Like staying off of anything that's like bread, corn, potatoes, sugar. What's the other one? Rice. Anything white, right? All the white starchy carbs. I'm staying off of that. So mostly I'm just doing fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, nuts and seeds and stuff like that. But vegetables and apples have carbs, and I'm not worried about those carbs. I'm worried about just like if we go to a Mexican restaurant, we don't eat the chips. If we go to a burger joint, I don't get the gluten-free bun because it's got carbs in it, and so I'm
or the fries.
I know, surprise. I normally don't eat gluten.
Or the fries. You don't eat fries.
I don't eat the French fries. All the stuff that's just divine that I love, I give up. But since I have done that, I have not had any nutrition problems during races. I don't have poop problems. My tummy doesn't get upset because if I reintroduce, like, let's say this, like in the old days, I would make up gluten-free peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I would get a gluten-free Jersey Mike's sub, and I would get gluten-free pizza. And I go from this like strict no carb diet to also I'm eating all of this gluten-free carb crap, and it just destroyed my intestines. not destroyed, but just I constantly was having problems and having to pull over and poop more often than I normally would. I just didn't like it. It was not good. So
what did you eat during this race?
So during this race, I did the same thing in Colorado. What I did is I did a lot of, I tried to stay as much as I could carb free, but because my legs were feeling so just drained of energy, I was like, I need to add carbs back in. Like I need the superpower. Like I basically, I took it like a PRN. If I was feeling great, like I'm just riding flat or just jogging downhill or whatever, oh yeah, I'll just eat cheese and meats and all yada yada. If I see that there's this big peak coming up and I'm going to be hustling up this mountain, then I would purposely eat some of the more carb dense foods. Like your normal energy bars will have like 24, 35 carbs and 250 calories. So I introduced carbs as a PRN, a per required need. PRN's an acronym for like a medication. Like, oh, my head hurts, I'm going to take a Tylenol. So I would add in the carbs when I knew I needed a boost of energy quickly, because your body can absorb carbs very, very fast. But still no.
And could you feel it?
Not as much as I wish I felt it, but I knew it was stupid if I tried to stay no carb while I was feeling drained of energy. It just it would really hurt the race. So I would say, yeah, I think I could tell, but I didn't feel like super.
So I've heard,
you know,
yeah, I've heard the phrase that when you're tired, you should eat carbs, but when you're hungry, you should eat protein.
Protein and fat.
I don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah, carbs spike your blood sugar, but the idea is if you're going up a 1,000-foot hill on your mountain bike, you need the blood sugar spike. Like you want to burn off that energy. But yeah, when you're just on a long gravel grind for 20 miles, yeah, you don't need the carbs. Don't need a Snickers bar there. Just go ahead and eat your fats and your proteins and your normal food, not the carbs. Yeah. So I think I did a pretty good strategy. Maybe I had 8 or 9 carb bars, like not the Cliff bars, but stuff like that.
Well, for you, that's kind of a lot for a 24-hour race.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to know. So was there anything you'd do differently during the race if you did it over?
Oh, what I would do differently. I definitely would taper. That I did not feel like myself. I was, it was really weird. I start going uphill and I immediately, and it wasn't a cardio thing. It felt like altitude. That's what it felt like. It's like my brain says I should be able to go, but my body's not responding. It was just fatigue. I mean, we really pushed hard in Colorado and I didn't stop to give my body time to recover. And so I really wish I would have just maybe gone on a light hike, not the wonky terrain, just go outside and get the blood flowing and all that, but don't do anything uphill with a loaded pack. But I did it. So that was the main thing. Yeah.
You said you thought you should taper, but it's actually recovery. Like you didn't really have any recovery.
I didn't do recovery, but I never did.
So yeah,
this was the first time. I guess it's just again, I think we were in Colorado. We were going, just for example, our normal team, especially on a multi-day race, we're not running. Maybe in the prologue or in the first day, we do a little bit of run. Most of the time, we're just marching along. We're not AR shuffling. In Colorado, we wanted to win. And so we literally, on that last trek, like every single time there was a downhill, we're running. It doesn't matter if it's rocky baby head terrain. That entire race from high altitude Mosquito Pass all the way down, from the other peak that we did, the Mountain 6 or whatever, all the way down. I mean, we must have run 30 miles in that race or something like that. We don't train for that. And so that's why I think what did the actual damage. But again, the day after the race, we're walking around the restaurant. I can't tell I have a problem until I walk uphill or upstairs. Oh my God. So I think that's another thing I would do. Or I would suggest for anybody that does a race like this, do hill repeats, like literally wear a heavy pack, whatever the heavier than you think that you're going to race with. So if you race with a 15-pound, then wear a 20-pound and walk uphill and downhill a lot and do that over and over and over. Do stairs. I think both are important because a lot of trails, they put in stairs and you're actually walking upstairs. But also when you're walking up terrain that's like a 30-degree incline, you want your Achilles heel and you want to like over pronate or whatever your foot, hyperextend your foot and your hamstring, because you're walking up scree I think that's what I would, what I think that we and every other racer should do is add in anytime you're about to do a lot of mountainous bushwhacking, going straight up steep inclines, is you got to train like that, because the fact that I can ride my bike and run and do everything normal, and the only thing where I feel completely like crap and powerless is uphill, tells me that I need to do more uphill training.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think my sleep worked good going into the race. Again, I take melatonin, I do like Afrin, I clear my sinuses, I try to make sure I'm in a calm environment before the race. Like a lot of people, they come to these races and they sleep in a tent, and it's cold and it's windy and you hear all the rattling, and you don't normally sleep in a tent, and so they start the race with no sleep. Like I talked to there's a couple that did our clinic, the Wicks, and they I think between the getting the maps and the excitement and all of that, I don't think they were able to sleep very much going into the race. And so that's something I think that we've got dialed in a little bit, is somehow or I'm able to go to sleep even though the maps are sitting right there. I like the nutrition plan. I think
meant to ask that earlier because of good sleep makes a huge difference.
Huge
So
difference.
I meant to ask that early. And the maps didn't change that for you.
The what?
And the maps didn't change that you had the maps right there. You still were able to make yourself go to bed.
Well, I had the time. I think I probably stayed up maybe an hour more than I wanted. Also, they did map handout the night before and the day of the race. So map handout was started at like 7 a.m. or something like that. Race brief was at 8. So I mean, I could go to bed at 10 o'clock and get up at 6 and still have breakfast and everything and still be way ahead of schedule. So I probably didn't go to bed till 10:30, but I had plenty of time. I mean, I got the maps, whatever. By the time I quit talking to people, which, ties me up sometimes, I probably was in my van by 6:30, and I had to drive up to the top of the park. So I was away from everybody. And I sat there and just very focused, looked at the maps, figured out I needed to use Caltapo, printed the maps, I transcribed all the points, printed the maps, and then started writing the clues on the maps, highlighting the route and everything. So I think I had almost all of it done. The only thing I hadn't done is transcribe the points onto the park map, which I had to do the next day in the morning. A little bit of a rush, and I didn't mistranscribe one of the points, which that was maybe one of the low in the races. I was like, what?
How much time did it cost you? That's what I want to know.
Let me bring it up on the map and I'll show you. It was this is one of these, like, I literally was like, maybe my compass is off. Like nothing is going the way it's supposed to be going. And I was like, am I tired? Is my compass? I've heard of people's compasses getting magnetized the opposite direction, but I was like, just stuff is not showing up where it's supposed to show up. And this is very frustrating. I think everybody does that from time to time. So, and actually I talked to a few other people and they said that this checkpoint 106 was actually one of the tougher ones on the course. Okay, so I came off of one of the highlights of this race was I think it was called Hidden Falls. It was checkpoint 104. It was in the far west side of the Kurt Gowdy State Park. We did this on foot, right? So we hiked way out from the park all the way out to this checkpoint, which is pretty easy to find because there's a lot of things saying, hey, the waterfalls are this way. And so from there, the next checkpoint is just 105. And of course, there are no trails going from 104 to 105. So you could either walk all the way around, which would probably take you an hour, or you bushwhack. Now, luckily, Mike had put the checkpoint right next to kind of a goat trail. So it's like, okay, there's a trail going from 104 to 105. I'm just going to follow the trail. So either way, I got up to 105, no problem. So then I'm trying to go from 105 to 106. And as you can see, you have a choice. You can bushwhack back down to 104 and then take the trail, which is a little bit of a straight shot, but then you got to decide, am I taking Lariat or am I going to attack it from Mustang? These are two trails that kind of surround this other high point. I decided I didn't want to go back down into that ravine. I'm already got all this altitude. So I'm going to follow El Alto, which was a trail kind of leading north-northeast. And then I'm going to shoot a bearing over and I'm going to catch this trail called Mustang. And then from Mustang, I was going to take Lariat over, drop down, get 106, no problem. So I bust through the first trail, which is this Alto bypass, and I come across the next trail, which I thought was Mustang. Now, obviously there's a little, I'm sorry, if you're looking at the map, there's a little creek here, and I should have known I need to cross a creek before I hit Mustang. But either way, I got to cross the first trail, hit the second trail, head south. I'm going to see a split. As you can tell on the thing, I aimed off thinking I'm going to hit just above this, this intersection, and I'm going to head south and there'll be an intersection. Well, I'm running down this trail as fast as I can, and there's no intersection, no intersection, no intersection. And then it turns. I think I'm here on Mustang, and maybe I passed Lariat. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I hit this checkpoint, this Cow Creek. What checkpoint is this? This checkpoint I. I've already been to I know this checkpoint's here. I know, holy crap, I am in the wrong spot. How the hell did that happen? And so I come around the corner, and then I just basically brute force. I'm just going to take a bearing, and I'm going to go to 106. I'm looking for this Mustang trail. I'm going to cross the creek. I'm going to hit Mustang. And I'm going to run up Mustang, run over Lariat, drop it on 6, right? Because I didn't want, this is very steep, rugged terrain. I cross this thing and I never see Mustang. Like this, I'm looking for it, never see it. I just keep going and going and going and going. And I'm like, my God, at some point I'm going to hit this Mustang trail, and I'm climbing and I'm tired and my legs hurt and I'm eating carbs and it's the middle of the night and just everything sucks. And I think I get to this high point, and now I'm frustrated, and I just see a glimmer of reflection, and I had misplotted the point. I actually thought the point, I think, was on above Lariat, so I'm just heading in a direction to hit a trail, and once I hit the trail, I'll figure out where I am. So as I'm cruising up here, I see a little reflection, and I'm like, that looks like a CP. Like, that's weird. Like, I know this Lariat is a dirt road. I've seen it. I've been on it. It's double track dirt road that horses go on. So I know I haven't crossed it. And sure enough, I climb up. Look, I'm just going to go get this CP. And then once I know what CP this is, then I can find out where I am, and I can reattack 106. At this point, I could be anywhere on the map. I have no clue. And I get up there, and it's 106. And I'm just like mind blown. I have no idea what just happened. And then as you can see, I leave 106 and I head northeast, thinking that I'm going to hit this other bike trail. And I run into these a 2-person female team as I hit this Lariat trail. This 2-person female team, and they start asking, "Have you seen any wildlife around?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've seen like 1,000 chickmunks, a bunny rabbit, a bunch of deer, and yada yada." And they said, "No bear?" I was like, "No, I haven't seen any bear." And they're like, "I think we just saw a bear." And it, like, something was staring at us and stalking us, and like, we're terrified, and we don't want to go off trail. And
Wow.
I was like, well, the checkpoint's right there. It's like, I didn't see anything, and I just scared everything off. So we sat there and chatted for a second. And I was like, are we on yada yada road thing, bike trail? And they're like, no, we're on Lariat. I was like, weird. Because again, I had misplotted 106 on my map, and I'm looking at it going, how did I head northeast and hit Lariat? This makes no sense. And now, but if you're looking at the screen, now you can see kind of how I randomly hit 106 without hitting Lariat, and then hit Lariat after 106.
So when did you realize that you had transposed it onto your own maps incorrectly?
When I got back to the van or something. Once I got on Lariat,
you didn't figure it out.
I'm going to let all of that go. I have now reacquired. I need to worry about my next point. I'm not going to sit here and have a pity party and figure out. I just got really lucky that I stumbled into 106 rando.
You got so lucky.
Yeah, it's literally I'm using the hand torch. Like, we got these super bright Phoenix hand torches, and I'm like looking around, just trying to figure out. I need a sign from God or something, And then bling, there's the CP, and I'm like, okay, this is awesome. So
I love those hand torches.
Oh yeah,
they are the best hand torches.
Lights up everything. When you're lost, just like light that thing up, and you could see the Statue of Liberty from Wyoming if you need to.
Yeah, we should add the link to that hand torch in the notes.
Yeah, we can put it in the notes.
And our promo code.
And our Phoenix promo code, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was probably my most embarrassing. That was, you just get in the middle of the race, you throw your hands up like, I don't know what to do. What do I, I just got really lucky there. But that slapped me around enough. I was like, okay, I need to get focused and stay on track. But that was the only point that I had mistranscribed.
It's probably kind of good that you didn't realize it then, because then maybe you would have second guessed all of your other points.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's the danger of not using the race director's maps. You know, I mean, you're physically transcribing stuff over, and you're doing it fast. And you know, I tried to double check, triple check, and but that was the only one that gave me a really bad problem.
And while it's not normal to have so much time with the maps and to be able to print your own maps and use outside maps, it is normal in races to be given a couple of different types of maps that you kind of have to overlay. Like a lot of race directors give you park maps where you're kind of looking at the park map and the topo map and trying to make it match up. So, and some races where you're plotting your own points using UTMs. That's we've made that mistake before where you just put the point in the wrong place. So you got so lucky. So anyway, you were racing solo.
Yep.
And how did you feel about that? You're no stranger to racing solo.
No. Like most racers, like you get involved in adventure racing, but you don't have a team. And so you end up going solo, which is nice because you learn all the different aspects of racing. So it's a little bit of an advantage to somebody who, let's say there's an existing team and they say, oh, we just need a Sherpa or we just need a navigator. And that's all your job is. I just need to carry stuff and follow the team. Everything's fine. So I think racing as a solo for the first couple of years, I do like it. I like it from a couple of things. It's not teams are distracting, sometimes in a good way, because you get to talk to people and have fun and tell jokes and learn about people's life stories. But it's also distracting, especially if you're a navigator and everybody else is back there talking, having fun and telling jokes and singing songs, and you're trying to figure out which way is the damn checkpoint. So, so solo allows me just to be in my element. I can be in the maps. I can be quiet. I don't, you know, I mean, luckily I cross paths with teams, so I get a little bit of socialization, and, you know, I'm one to stop and talk. And like, you know, like I spent I think we went after with the Wicks, the couple I was telling you about that did the clinic, cross paths with them, and they were off because they were using the race director's maps, and I was like, no, we're on this road, trust me, I know exactly where I am, and we got to go this way. So they followed me up to, I think it was 117 or something like that, which is a really hard checkpoint to get. And then we broke apart, but I got to hang out with them for like 30 or 45 minutes attacking the checkpoint, so it's not totally lonesome. I do like it too because I can push my limits. You know, a lot of times, I think in all teams, the navigator's got to be one of the stronger people on the team, because obviously you can't have a really strong team and a weak navigator because they're in the back suffering and trying to read maps. And again, when your heart rate's high and you're stressed out, you're not going to make good decisions. So this puts me in that situation where I have to nav while being physically taxed, and it makes it much harder to go fast and you know, to be, instead of operating at 80% capacity, I'm operating at 100% capacity and making stupid decisions. So that I like it just because it really pushes my own personal limits. I can kind of everybody wants to know, like, what am I capable of by myself? But you know, there's a safety concern. Again, we're out there bushwhacking around stuff. I could have easily fallen down something and not been within cell phone. I mean, I carry my own spot tracker with a GPS thing that you can come find me, but solo, I don't feel as safe. If something happened, I'm a little more careful, I think, when I'm solo. But I think the camaraderie, you know, I guess this was a great example of an example. If I was a 4-person team, and I knew I didn't know I was in first. I knew I was probably in the top 3 when I crossed the finish line. But you know, I come screaming in there at 2:17 a.m. all excited. I just completed this course, and there's one volunteer who, I think his name's Ed. I think. Sorry, Ed, if I got your name wrong. Super nice guy. He had just woken up. Shift change had just occurred. And I come screaming in. I'm like, okay, I'm done. And he's like, okay, what do I do? I need a passport. And, you know, I mean, there's no bells, there's no whistles, there's no clapping, there's no nothing. We're trying to be quiet because everybody's sleeping. There is a campfire, which I really appreciated. But basically, kind of looked at the passport, and I had mispunched some stuff because I think the flags had, maybe it was A on the sheet, but it was BB on the flag. And so that we had to argue through, like, you know, did I punch the wrong one, or did the flag have the wrong one? But we finally sorted that out. I had cleared the course and gave him my tracker, and he was like, okay, you're done. I was like, great. I think I'm gonna go get a cocktail and sit next to the campfire. What about you? so that experience is not the same as holding hands with your teammates, crossing a finish line with all the pomp and circumstance and the high fives and we did it, guys, this was awesome, and hanging out. Yeah, I sat here with the volunteer and we talked and watched the stars, and it's fun. I'm watching teams come and go, and so the team experience, I think, is probably the better one, unless what you specifically want to do is push your personal limits to see what you're capable of by yourself. And so I would recommend everybody do both. Race sometimes with a
I
team,
agree with
sometimes
that.
solo.
Yeah, they're both really valuable experiences. When you do a race solo and you're not usually the lead nav, or you're not usually the Sherpa, or you're not usually certain things, and then all of a sudden you have to be everything all at once, you certainly gain a lot of empathy for the other roles that you don't usually play.
Right. And with nav, and you know this, like everybody on our team, almost everybody that we've raced with can navigate and has navigated and is fully capable. Lead nav is just whoever right now would be the best at it, right? Sometimes you take the maps, or Caitlin takes the maps because I'm wonking out or towing or carrying stuff or tired and fall asleep on the paddle. But we can pass the maps around our team, and each navigator knows if I start getting into trouble, I can turn around and ask, hey, put a second set of eyes on this. This is starting to look weird, and we can help each other out. We talk through it. We nav as a team. It's not a navigator doing everything and everybody else is just partying. When you're solo, you're it. You don't get to ask. I mean, I was lucky I could talk to these girls and say, hey, where am I? What road am I on? And they tell me Larry, and I'm like, whoa, that's weird. Okay, thank you. But normally that doesn't happen as a solo. You are on your own. You got to figure it out no matter how lost you are.
So that's another reason I appreciated that you had your own spot tracker. So the race platform was pretty disappointing. It didn't really work
Yep.
at all. I think one or maybe a handful of teams, their tracker did move a little bit, but yeah, yours didn't move at all pretty much the whole race. So I was glad to see your personal
You're
tracker
talking
was
about
functioning.
the live tracking platform. This is not Rev 3. This was the technology that they were using. The live tracking is, I think it's a new vendor that was, they did say that they were in beta testing. They kind of warned us that it may or may not work. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little disappointing. Well, from a outsider's perspective, trying to watch the race to try to figure out what's going on. I think it was called Race IoT, something like that, a platform I hadn't heard of. But yeah, it wasn't functional, and part of that is the safety concern, especially when there's solos. I wasn't that worried about you, but it was nice to see your personal tracker. So
Yeah.
that was nice.
And I think during the race they were, I think Roy mentioned it as well, that his tracker wasn't working. So like you'd come into TA and they would switch out the tracker and try to get it working again. I mean, the race volunteers and their team were doing the best they could, but just the technology, again, it's in beta and it just wasn't there yet. It wasn't working very well, which is a bummer.
Yeah, and I didn't make some assumptions that it might have been the cell service there, or when you're in wilderness areas like that, it's not a given that you're going to be able to get a signal.
It
so
most likely was a self-service driven device, because the GPS devices, there's not a lot of like mom and pops that put these things out. Like normally if a race director is going to use GPS technology, so you don't rely on cell towers, it's usually either Garmin or Spot. There's a handful of brands. Like if you go to REI, you can see a handful of brands. But these trackers looked kind of like the other trackers that we've seen that are cell phone. They're like a little tiny black box, and it just, you can tell that this is cell phone. There's not a lot of cell service out there, and we were in these canyons and stuff. This is a lot of nothing. Like we never once in this entire race passed somewhere where you could spend money. Not even a vending machine. It's just like zero. Maybe you go to the visitor center, there might have been a vending machine, which we did pass the visitor center. But there is nothing. These are just a bunch of ranchers and open BLM land and hikers and RV people. Like, for example, the RVs all have Starlink outside their RV. There's like no cell service. So that's probably why the trackers weren't working. They need, if they really want good live tracking at the next Cowboy Tough, they probably need to go with a GPS based version.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as racers, we're starting to expect that. You know, the technology is there and a lot of races provide that now. So hopefully that'll get better. But, you know, speaking of the race organization, a lot of times when you do a race, you get a certain feel for a company or a race director, or, you know, each company kind of has a different feel to it and something that makes them unique. What did you think was unique about Rev 3, and would you do this race again?
Oh, I'd absolutely do the race again. I loved the course, the terrain, the weather. Course design was amazing. I loved having tons of course strategy. I can't stand races when it's like an ant trail, where it's just obvious which direction you go. It's just a matter of, do I hit the CP off the trail, but everybody else has done the same trail. This was really unique. And if maybe in a different presentation, if I can get a handful of tracks from other racers using their Strava data from their watches, I could do the overlay and I can show the differences between different strategies. Like Roy gave me his, and I'm hoping to get a couple more. And it's amazing that we finished within like 40 minutes of each other, but our course strategy was completely different. I mean, so I can't, either way, the race had a great course strategy. Mike was talking about it, that, you know, he's based out of like Virginia, right? That he's known for the Shenandoah area. Remember, he was with Adventure Enablers and then they split off and yada, yada. But they all are in that Shenandoah area. So for a race director to project a course, you know, 20 hours away and driving, I think the way he put it, this is Rev 3 light. They don't have all of the infrastructure and all the stuff that they have in Virginia. It doesn't make any sense to lug it all the way over here for a race where there's only 100 racers. It just financially doesn't make any sense. So I got to give it to him for getting the volunteers and everybody to come out and project a race of this caliber so far away from home base. I was really impressed. You know, we didn't have like the hot food and all of the big ceremony and all the stuff, just because there's not a lot of people that can affordably cater stuff. You'd have to either go from Laramie or Cheyenne. It's like a 30-minute drive. So it's really, this was pure racing. It wasn't all of the pre-party and the after party and all that stuff. Yeah, you know, the maps, he very much wanted this to be a race that entry-level people could feel comfortable doing. So that's why there's kind of two courses. There was the inside the park course, which was the 4 and the 8 hour, and then the 24-hour folks got to go over to the Medicine Bow, and he warned us 50 times, that's the big hard part. If you're not comfortable, don't go out there. Cut those points and get back into the park, because the park's going to be fun. So if you're not having a good time, turn around and come back. So he made it clear. So I guess what he wanted it to be challenging for those of us that are experienced, and we came out for the challenge. And he wanted it to be easy or moderate for the people that wanted a moderate race and didn't want the crazy getting lost in the middle of a freaking farmer's field. So I really appreciated that part of his course design. I think that covered it. It would but everything else, I mean, everything went flawlessly. The TAs worked fine. I guess there was only one thing that fell through that was annoying for all of us, but it was out of his control. The last paddle section, for those of us that were progressing through the course pretty fast, it was going to be a nighttime paddle, which I was kind of looking forward to, because nighttime paddle navigation is kind of hard. But the vendor that had the kayaks tried to stick it to him, and I think he was late like by 3 minutes on returning the kayaks. They were going to charge him for a full another day. Either way, he wasn't able to secure the kayaks for the solos for the night paddle. So like when we came in off that bike TA, it came off the bike TA. I still had to go. No, I'm sorry. Came off the Trek TA. I was transitioning over to bike, and one of the volunteers was like, "Hey, by the way, there's no kayaks. It's windy. If you want to try to take a canoe out on that lake, you're welcome to do it." But Mike opened it up so that the solos, because there are no boats appropriate, you can go get those paddle points by bike. And so that was the safety thing. Because, you know, in a canoe, if you're in the back and the front gets blown, you can't keep a canoe straight in the wind on open water. So I think it was a good call to let us to use the bikes to get the points. But, you know, that gives us a little bit of an advantage, because we now don't have to go through a transition to paddle. We don't have to get wet. Meanwhile, the teams with 2 or more had to do the paddle. So kind of surprised there's not more protests, but either way, that was how he worked it out. And it did. I mean, we had to go kind of out of our way on the bike, and we had to bushwhack over to get the thing. So it was it really an advantage or not? I'm not really sure. So that kind of sucked that fell through, but I think Mike did everything he could to get those kayaks. He had them for us in the beginning of the day. It's just the ones in the evening fell through.
Yeah, interesting. And it's not unheard of that there are some surprises, I guess we could call it that,
Yep.
in some races. Just unexpected things happen. But either way, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
We
I'll show you. I was going to show you the cool thing. He did give us a swag bag. You were talking about what's different with his race and everybody else. Like, he gave us a swag bag. We got tons of squirt bike lube. We got bike cleaner stuff, like almost like Simple Green bike cleaner. But seriously, I've got enough bike lube in here to last me a couple of years. And then for the people who, I think everybody got a medal, but the winner gets the belt buckle, an actual belt buckle. And so I thought that was pretty cool to get a belt buckle. And then also he's got this like really cool like cutting board. And for those of you listening, I'm sorry, I'm holding it up for the YouTube viewers, but if it'll even show up, let me stand up a little bit. So it's like a cutting board. Dang it, it's not my virtual backdrop.
It's okay. We get the idea.
Either way, so I got this really cool like big heavy board that for the winners. And so that was pretty cool. I think they're very proud of the cowboy part of Cowboy Tough. Like Mike's got his cowboy hat on, and so I don't know. That was a great race. If anybody is within a day's drive, I would definitely recommend doing the course, especially with Mark Latanzi's maps next year. I think that's going to make it really good. There's infinite possibilities on designing courses out here because there's so many trails. You don't have to recycle checkpoints unless it's something like the Hidden Falls. I mean, that's kind of a neat checkpoint, but you could design 10 races out here and not have the same experience.
And it does feel like the wild, wild west, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like you do feel a little bit like a cowboy.
Yep. Oh, and one other part that was actually really cool. He reserved like 10 RV sites and then also a group campsite. So I think for people with tents, they were able just to come in and camp for free. So it was kind of neat there, having everybody together. And then for those of us that had an RV that we wanted to plug in and have electric and all of that, we were able to, he had the reservation, but we were able to pick a spot and then go up and pay ourselves, which, was $30 or something like that. And so it was kind of neat. We kind of circled the wagons around the race headquarters, which was like a little pavilion. And so I thought that was kind of cool. It was campfire and everybody's doing stuff and all of that. It was so it was a neat atmosphere, which I think a lot of race directors do that, but it's just way more fun than everybody has to drive to the race start the morning of the race and park in a parking lot. This was more of it didn't make sense. I mean, I guess some people may have gone to Cheyenne and stayed in Cheyenne and drove in, but a lot of people just stayed and camped out of their car. I thought that was really neat.
That's really cool. And so you're still out there. You drove the van from Virginia Beach out to Colorado and now Wyoming. And you have the Bears Ears race 8-hour on Saturday. So I guess that's what's next.
I kind of just decided mentally today that I'm going to do that race. So I need to sign up. But yeah, that's in Steamboat, Colorado.
Steamboat Springs, to be specific.
Where's that?
Steamboat Springs.
Yeah. So it's North Colorado. I've never been to that area. And again, since I'm in the van and you're flying out, I think on the 21st, and we're going to do another week up near Yellowstone. So I'm just kind of on my own out here. And so I'm going to meander west. I want to get into some big mountains and do some big hikes and see some alpine lakes and stuff, and maybe do some pack rafting, some hiking, and some relaxing so that I can go into this 8-hour feeling like $1 million and try to crush some souls.
Yeah, I would suggest relaxing, and I'm really excited to join you again in about a week. And honestly, this lifestyle is a little bit of a dream come true for us. We've had this in the back of our minds that, Chip could stay out west and I could come and go a little bit as needed from Virginia. So it's kind of cool that we are pulling this off and that we're prioritizing this type of lifestyle. It takes prioritizing. And yes, we both are able to work remotely, but we also have important things here in Virginia. My kids, for example. So it's a balancing act, and it's pretty exciting that it's just been a great year for us to be able to do all of these things that we've been kind of leading up to, and just really excited. So I won't be there in time for the Bears' ears,
No.
even though I feel like I'd be ready, because I'm feeling good now because I
spot
did have
tracker
some
and
recovery.
I'll
Say
send
what?
I'll do the same thing. I'll send you the maps. I'll give you my spot tracker, and we'll try to do, even if they're not tracking, I'll try to give you my thing and give you as much info as I can.
Well, I think the race is going to be over just with a blink of an eye. So I don't know
compared to
how much
64
following.
hours, yeah, that when at this point even the expeditions go by in a blink of an eye for us. I mean, that was our 5th expedition, and it's like we're already finished. Like this, I want to go back out.
Yeah. Are
So
there going to be trackers for the Bears' ears?
I'm not sure. The guys told me about it, and I did do a little bit of research. Like, they have a Bears Ears website, and then they have USARA, and USARA has the date wrong. And so I really haven't done a lot of research because I didn't know. I was like, where do I want to go? I mean, I'm completely free to roam around as long as I have internet. I can do my job. And so now I've decided to do Sugarloaf Mountain today, and then tomorrow I'll decide what I'm going to do then. But going back to it, I think we probably need to do a podcast specifically on the lifestyle that we've designed or chosen. It's one of the questions that we get a lot. And it's not like we went from being like normal people to adventuring nonstop. It's taken 10 years to get here. And I think we should consider doing a podcast to explain exactly how we did it. But I was, and I think I talked about it in the Colorado race ramble, but back of the envelope math, I am, but I think you're close to where I am. I'm well over 500 hours of being on race courses this year. Last year I ended at 600 at the end of the year. This year my goal is 800, which is well more than 2 hours per day every single day of the year. And I am on track to do the 800. That's a lot. And we're very adventurous and we love to do it. And most people are minds blown, like this is my first 24-hour and you're already up to 500 hours this year. So I think we should do a podcast on how did we back ourselves into this lifestyle and still be able to have a job and all the kids and all the normal stuff. So
yeah, we should do that. But in the meantime, we
Back
gotta
to
go. All right. Well, great job. And I think that's it.
That's a wrap on Cowboy Tough. Look for the video coming out soon. I have uploaded the video to Kathleen. Hopefully she's working her magic. And also our Expedition Colorado video hopefully is coming out soon. And the Expedition Colorado Race Ramble just got published today, which is the 14th on most podcast places. So check that out if you haven't already.
I assume you never did find the second SD card.
I have not found the second SD card. It is such a bummer. I feel like I need to tear the van apart to get to it, but we may have to go with hopefully Hunter will give us some of his footage and your footage. Yeah, I'm bummed. Yeah. The minute we publish that video is when I'm going to find the SD card.
That'd be fine too. I hate missing that. All right, everybody.
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.